Okay, all right. Call the meeting to order. Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Architecture Board of Review, September 3rd. Everybody knows what year it is. Call to order. That's me. And roll call, that's you.
Okay. Member Waymeyer.
Here.
Member Dahlman.
Here.
Member Deacon.
Here.
And Chair Hunter.
Right here.
And members Callahan and Kerouac are absent.
And we're just barely have a quorum, but that's all it takes to make a decision. And I think we will be able to fill Carol's seat, interview the woman, and probably once all the red tape gets taken care of, we'll have another architect on board.
Okay.
So, minutes of August 14th. Any comments?
I have, since Carol wasn't here to read them, I actually read them this time. And
She was in there as pro tem.
I do have three corrections. One is in item number 3, where it says Chair Pro Tem Russ, it should say Chair Hunter.
Okay.
I don't know what I did with my minutes. Okay, I'll take your word for it.
And in the next section 5, at the end of it, the last paragraph, that's underlined, the fourth line down says vertically between top of the roller brick, that should be Rolock.
Good catch.
And the last one is on page 3. The second paragraph down, the second line, it says, since 2017, which leads you to believe that there was no flooding before 2017. And I believe that he said, since he bought it in 2017.
Okay.
Mike, I'll give you these with my notes on it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so any other comments on the minutes? If not, need a motion to approve?
I move the minutes be approved as noted.
And a second?
Second.
No further comments? Everybody say aye if they approve?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, good. All right, is there anybody in the audience that's not here for something that's on the agenda that would like to speak? Okay, then we'll move on. So the first thing is a public hearing to review a site plan to replace benches and lights at the Central Lake County Joint Action Water Agency. This was postponed from last, and so, as usual, you guys have done a stellar job of putting together a package. So go right ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this evening I'm requesting your input and support of 2 replacement projects at our 200 Rockland Road location. And the first item I'll discuss is benches, if that's okay. As those of you who have strolled around our pond in front of our facility may have noticed, our 4 27-year-old wooden benches are in need of replacement. I have included pictures of all 4 benches in my submission to the village, and we're requesting your authorization to replace them in approximately the same location and to possibly add a 5th bench. So what is it exactly that we're changing? First, in lieu of wooden benches, we propose to replace them with a wood-colored resin wood. Resin's a more desirable term for the word plastic. And these benches use recycled plastic slats on powder-coated steel frames. The resin wood is just simply more weather-resistant, requires less maintenance, and it'll maintain its appearance. Second, we would like to use a mix of flat benches, that's what we have now, and traditional backed benches. Currently, we only have the flat benches. And this desire is just simply based on our observation of folks laying on the benches to do yoga, or using them to eat lunch or lay out their fishing gear, as well as people who just want to sit on the bench and probably would like to lean back. Third, we'd like the opportunity to add a 5th bench, perhaps near the Lake Bluff Open Lands area entrance should Lobola be desirous of such a bench. And finally, we'd like the opportunity to reconfigure the bench locations if necessary up to about 30 feet from their current locations to space them out more evenly along the south side of the pond or to capture shade of trees that are now there. And we'd like to move the southeastmost bench a little more east away from our fence. As you recall, when those benches were put in, we didn't have a fence. And post 9/11, the fence went in, it's very close to one of the benches, so we'd just like to move it away from that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the benches.
Julie, any questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay.
No, I think it's good.
Ed?
It's a win.
Yeah, it's a win, it's a win.
Okay,
That's good, okay. Let's do it as a package, or want to do this individual parts?
However you prefer.
you know, if, maybe you'd want to, I don't care how you do it, but you may have a problem with my wall sconces, and then I wouldn't want them both to get held up.
Okay, we'll do this independently then, so.
Okay.
So, since nobody has a problem, then somebody make a motion to approve the benches as been outlined with additional benches and slight movement and new materials.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second,
As presented, okay?
I guess the only comment I have is so long as the color is like this and not that,
They're going to be like that,
they're going to be like this.
the one you objected to,
They're going to be, they're going
that
to
lighter brown color,
be, they're
yes,
going to be
sir.
that color?
I didn't
Yes,
see
sir.
that.
It's a cedar color, it's they have green or they have that color. They call it cedar. I mean, I don't know how good that color printout is compared to the actual bench.
This one.
What?
I'm sure that's what he's talking about. It's gonna be that color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
It's going to be
Whatever
more
show-
yellow or more brown? There's a photo that's brown and there's drawings that look yellow. Is it more like
That's the color?
the brown
No.
photo or the yellow
That's
drawings?
the color.
That looks like the color to me.
yeah.
Okay,
To give you my most honest answer, they call them cedar colored. How it is exactly rendered on your color printout, I can't speak for that. I expect it to be not yellow.
I just
Right.
replaced my deck with something called cedar tone, and it looks like,
It's gonna
Cedar
be,
tone.
it's gonna be
Yeah.
reddish.
yeah, it's not yellow at all.
That's my desire, not the yellow color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you're happy with that?
yeah.
Okay. So you made a motion, Dave?
I did.
Yeah, did you second
I
it?
second it.
Second.
Okay, then this requires a roll call.
Oh, okay. Member Dahlman,
Aye.
Member Deegan,
Aye.
Member Whitmire,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye,
Okay.
okay.
Yes, it's-
Moving on to lights.
Okay, so as we near completion of our lighting modernization program, we have 29 wall sconces left on our two buildings at 200 Rockland Road that we would like to convert over. Currently, they're 175-watt metal halide wall sconces, and they have lamps rated at 14,000 lumens and a color temperature of 4,000 Kelvin. So what are we proposing that's different? First, all of the new wall sconces will be shielded. Currently, not all of our wall sconces are shielded, so that means you will not be able to see the lamp from the property perimeter. Second, they actually have a bug rating. When the original ones were put in 91, I don't think bug ratings existed. The bug rating is a backlight of 1, uplight of 0, and glare of 1. And finally, they emit 4,712 lumens. That's a lot less than the 14,000 that we currently have. All the new fixtures will have a bronze finish to match the existing building window frames and trim, and they will be located in the exact same locations as the existing fixtures. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So this is basically going to have the same, the same light temperature as what's there now?
It's-
Which
they're-
is the warm?
4,000,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Okay.
How many are there?
There's 29 total,
Looks like a lot.
There's a lot of buildings out there.
29 total, 23 are shielded and 6 are unshielded. I provided a drawing that shows you, it's pretty hard to see, I admit, but it shows you the location of every one of the wall sconces.
Yeah.
They're primarily located over doors and entrances. As you know, our property is not lit up, in the back especially, and so this allows the operators who are moving around the property at night on their rounds to be able to see the entrances.
Will all 29 be replaced with the shielded lamps, even though there are several that are not shielded now?
Yes, every one of them will be shielded.
Ed?
I mean, I think it's a positive that the unshielded ones are now being shielded. I think that's a positive. It's, I didn't realize there were that many. There's a lot.
There's a lot of wall.
Yeah, there's a lot of wall.
Meanders all
Yeah.
over the place
Yeah.
back there.
Yeah. I don't have an issue. If somebody else can think of something that I'm not.
Neil?
No, I think it's very good.
Yeah, no, it's good. Big energy savings, and you won't tell they've been changed until the light goes on, and then you still won't tell.
No, my maintenance supervisor was very frustrated that I even came to you with this. Said, well, I answer to them, you don't. You answer to me.
So why
And
don't you think-
I understand the housing looks identical, I understand that the color temperature is identical, but we're going to go from non-shielded to shielded, that's a change. And the lumens are different, so I just think it's something that you should, I know we've gone through all of our LEDs with you.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're okay with this particular model.
Appreciate that. No, I think, my opinion is it's good to go.
Agreed.
So, once again, we need to, unless anybody's got some more questions.
It's Julie's turn now.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
I need a motion.
Okay?
It's your turn again.
I move we approve the lighting as indicated in the plans,
Recommend.
as recommended in the plans.
Well, recommend to the village board.
As recommended to the village board.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion, no? Another roll call.
No.
Okay, Member Dahlman.
No, I'm agreeing, aye.
You what?
I thought we were voting aye.
Oh,
Right. Member Deegan,
Aye.
Member Waymire,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
aye.
Okay, so the recommendation passes. So we'll schedule that for the village board for final approval.
Okay, I'll see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where am I?
The cell tower next.
Okay. Yeah, where'd it go? Oh, that. That's old. That's fine. Okay, next up, we have a consideration of application for a change of antennas and equipment on the cell tower at 45 East Center. And there you
Hello,
are.
good evening. I'm Suzanne. I'm an agent with Crown Castle, the cell tower owner, and I'm submitted the application on behalf of T-Mobile to swap out 3 of their antennas while removing 6. And they will also be swapping 6 radios and removing 2 on the existing cell tower.
So that's
Just
basically,
maintenance.
it's a
basically.
reduction of what's up there?
Yes.
It's not, and everything still stays inside?
Everything exactly the same. They're literally just maintenance and swapping out the antennas. Just 3, removing 6.
Anybody have any questions at all? I'd be surprised if you did, because none of this we understand.
The new antennas are larger. How much larger are they?
No, they're going to be exactly the same.
Oh, it says larger in the paperwork, that's why I asked.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
they-
Mike and I
They
spoke
looked larger on
about
the drawing
that.
to me, but I later talked to Susan and found out this.
Yeah,
already
it's gonna
decided.
look probably larger
Yep.
in the coloring because of now you're only looking at 3 instead of
Uh-huh.
6 around
Okay.
the mount.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Here we go again. Anybody has any questions?
No, just that it comply with the 3 conditions that Mike mentioned.
Yeah. Then we need another, it does.
I don't have
Okay.
anything to contribute.
So we need to do another roll call vote, or we need to do another motion. I don't know.
Motion first, yep.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that this item be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, the wires run inside the tower. 2, the ground level equipment be below the top of the brick wall. And 3, antennas and all equipment on the tower to be painted in a color that matches the existing tower.
Second?
Okay, so ready for a roll
Okay.
call vote?
Roll call?
Okay, Member Waymire,
Aye.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
Member Deegan,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
All right.
All. Okay, it's approved.
Thank you very much, I
Hey, thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So far, nobody's coming in with more stuff, we've added that to that building like 4 times. We put a box up, and we keep stepping around. All right. Next is the consideration of draft amendments to the sign code. And I was not here at that meeting when the commission discussed this. I don't know where I was, but I wasn't here.
Right, early July, yeah.
Anyway, so, let's just jump into this. This is kind of informal. And anybody that wants to speak to this, we can do that too.
Good.
So let's see what you got.
So also, this is an additional handout that I put together this morning.
Thanks.
Kind of helps you understand kind of where you're at now and what's proposed. So I just kind of really quickly want to go through what's in this.
Robert, did you want one of these? Yep.
So just to kind of quickly go over what is in this draft amendment that you're looking at. If you remember when I was here last time, and we had that kind of summary memorandum that talked about our observations. Kind of it was using the approach of using the different development types as well as developing a master sign plan. So using that, this is the proposed draft of the regulations. What you see on the first page was trying to address some of the issues you've had over time with address signs on buildings. So as you can see, we've created for the L1, L2 districts, created that sliding scale that really goes from 2 square feet to 8 square feet for an address sign. And it's really based on the linear frontage of the building to create a kind of, if you have a slightly larger building, that you can then have a slightly larger address sign, strictly address signs only. If there is a multiple entry building, what we've written into that provision, it's item D on that first page, was allowing for 1 sign for the development overall, again, based on linear footage, and then allowing each individual entryway to have an address sign, which would then also be based on their footage. So you would have one kind of larger sign, and then for your linear frontage of the establishment, a smaller sign on your door that might have your address on it. Again, strictly speaking, only the address sign. So the real meat of these provisions, of these revisions, is kind of taking a look at the L1, L2 district, and this would be creating a new item F, and then really leaving item D, which is now in your current code where these sign provisions live, just kind of bringing them out away from the other districts so those districts don't get impacted. And as we talked about, when we were out here driving around looking at the different development types that occur in the L1, L2, you really have kind of 4 different types of things that happen. a single-tenant development, a multi-tenant retail center, such as the Target, multi-tenant non-retail developments that share pretty much a single entryway, kind of like an office building that has one entryway in the front, as well as multi-tenant non-retail developments that each have an individual entrance. So it really kind of looks at those 4 types. Really looking at those, one of the things that we've proposed here is the idea of the master sign plan. And allowing the master sign plan to, it would be required for the multi-tenant, the requirement is for multi-tenant retail centers, again, like the Target, it would be required to submit a master sign plan. And then a new development, multi-tenant, non-retail developments with the shared entrance would require that master sign plan as well. What we've made on the other types of developments, we've made it optional. And the way that it's incentivized is saying that if it is optional, you can continue to come in, and for each and every sign would come before you to get approval for that sign to work with the standards that are in place here. But if you chose, you have the option, though, to come in with a master sign plan that would then get approved. Subject to kind of the debate between the ABR reviewing it. What it is the master sign plan, as you see in here, is really just approving a sign package for the entire development. And once that package is approved, as people come in to get signs, it goes through just the village administrator approving it. So it makes it much easier, and that's kind of the incentive for those where it's optional to come in and have that done. You also have to deal with the fact that there's existing developments out there, and we wanted to acknowledge those. And again, while we can't force them to come in to get a master sign plan, we wanted to provide them the option to do that, so therefore if that whole plan is approved, they can come in when they need a new sign, and it's just an administrative approval rather than coming before the ABR as a whole. So you can see what we've done here is kind of taken a look at the different sign types. This is the memorandum that I handed out just now. It compares what's in the current ordinance with what is being proposed within the new sign code. So as you look at it, we've done this by sign types. Awnings, there's been some revisions there, kind of looking at if you have less than 100 linear feet, you can only have an awning or a wall sign. More than 100 linear feet, then you can have both. Limiting them to the entrance, limiting the amount of sign copy that's allowed, but keeping the vertical clearance the way that you design them now, kind of how high off the ground it has to be the same as what you have now. The next two, really looking at flags and flag poles and ground signs. We haven't made any revisions to the current permissions. We've basically maintained those and brought those over. The menu board sign is a new type of sign. It is accounted for in the planned commercial development from Target. What we've done is kind of looked at what that requires and basically kind of memorialized them within this proposed code. And really, they're just restricted to if you have a drive-through facility. Again, similar to flagpoles, the on-site information signs, this is your current provision. We've maintained that as it is and just kind of brought it over into this proposal. Probably where you see some of the more significant revisions is really looking at the wall or fascia signs. I'll just refer to them as wall signs. Really looking at kind of how they are allowed. As you can see, it's really one, rather than creating just one standard of a maximum of 60 square feet, we've made this, or proposed this to be more proportional. For most types of developments, it would be 1 square foot of sign area for each linear foot of the establishment. So it really creates that proportional control, with the exception of the multi-tenant shopping centers. There we've allowed more, again, basing this on what's in the current Target proposal. That number comes from that regulation. And again, kind of looking at where they can be placed, how they can be structured for multiple tenants. And then other things such as located no greater than 20 feet above grade, can't project more than 12 inches. Those are all current standards. We just maintain those. And probably the other biggest change that we brought in, as you're well aware, within the L1 and the L2 districts, you currently only allow for door signs, and window signs aren't really part of that part of the code. So we've made the proposal to allow for window signs, which would incorporate door signs as well, with a standard of about 15% of the window area for that tenant, which is a fairly restrictive standard. Many communities go much higher, so it's really keeping that a very small sign and not occupying a lot of the window. I would be happy to answer any questions. I know it's a lot. Hopefully, it's pretty clear the way we wrote it out and within this memo, but happy to take any questions.
Who's got a question besides me?
I know you do. I saw you making notes. Fire
I
away.
don't, yeah. Well, I'm going to get to that one later. When you say an address sign, and I'm just thinking of address being numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So there's no consistency, and there certainly isn't now, in the size of numbers throughout the development. I just want to make that clear to in my own head. On I guess it's the menu board where you're talking about anything that's height. It should be, we ran into an issue with a sign out there recently where it wasn't specified that it had to be above the grade, from grade to the top of the sign. And so the sign ended up on 2-foot legs, and now the sign is 10 feet tall, which was certainly not the intent of this board. And so we made an amendment to that and said from, however we put it.
Right, it was about calculating grade, including the
Calculating-
area under the sign.
Including the
toward
area under the sign.
To the area of the sign.
And that would be applicable village-wide, correct?
It would
Do
be-
any type of sign. It'd be applicable to any sign in any district, correct?
Well, it is now, but it wasn't then.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, whatever amendments that were made there, that's how these will be measured as well.
Okay. The other thing, and this is just what started, one of the things that started this whole issue of reviewing a sign out in L1 and L2 was years ago, the notion that the village had was to, maybe it's not necessarily light industrial anymore, or maybe some of it will change over to some other function. There's been a couple of instances out there, the kayak place, where what they do is indicated by their sign. The other one is the chimney. So there's another one that just kind of goes back to the old blacksmith idea. You've got a horseshoe and a hammer up there hanging out by your building. That there should be, if something like that comes along, it's not prohibited. It still has to come through here and get some sort of a variance, which both of those did. But is there some way that it could be not so strict? I don't know if you're following what I'm saying. Loosen it up a little bit for certain kind of instances.
In terms of loosening the sign regulations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a baby carriage maker and I come up with a baby carriage on the side of the wall, maybe that's a silly example.
Right.
But
Well, there is the loose, and there is also one thing I need to point out. I just noticed an error. Things got switched around. If you look on page 2, it's the multi-tenant, non-retail developments with individual entries that would require the sign plan. That got switched, just to clarify that. But speaking of the master sign plan, what we built in here for flexibility would be if they were coming in with a master sign plan where all the signs complied with what's in here, it would be ABR approval. If they wanted to have some modifications to that, and this actually is incentive to come in for the sign plan, they can do that going through an ABR recommendation and then onto the village board. So if they're coming in, so there is that flexibility automatically built in here, not as a variance, but as a modification that would require village board approval at the end.
see, the other thing that brought this thing to the table was in one of Robert's buildings, the wine distributor, who uses his window with this sort of screed that he changes on a monthly basis, I think. And that's his sort of, it shielded what he was doing inside from the, but it also was, this is what I do kind of a thing. And a lot of people objected to that. I don't. But that's, again, restricted by what you've got here, that's not allowed.
Well, in all of the different development types within the L1 and L2, we have increased the window signage to 15%. I don't know the numbers. I know I've seen what you're talking about. I don't know what that percentage is.
It's 100%, I think. It looks like
Yeah.
it's,
But the 15% is 15% of all the window area in his tenant space, on that facade of his tenant space.
well, I think that's the only window he's got.
Maybe, well,
And maybe the door.
in
but
that,
I'm-
but it's not
I'm just
necessarily-
using that as an
Yeah, you
example
might be
it helps the tenant out there, whatever their thing is, it helps them to do their job. And by not allowing them to do that, it doesn't help them.
I mean, I would argue if it covers all the window space, you don't want to allow 100% window coverage. It's just not, I understand, and it doesn't, when I drove past it, it didn't strike me as particularly egregious. It might be something that can be addressed if that development were to come in for the master sign plan option, to evaluate it that way and see if there's certain storefronts that they would like to assign greater window coverage to, and then again, going through that process with the village board, from ABR to the village board.
Because right now it's in limbo for, I don't remember how long.
We said for a year.
Okay. Okay, well, that was just a question.
Okay.
So, does anybody have any other?
Thinking of the wine shops, actually, that graphic that they had on there was quite tasteful. What I'm concerned about is I went around today taking some photographs of ones that I would prefer not to see, but I don't know how we control all that. I mean,
Pass it down.
Well, yeah.
because there's nothing in the code that prohibits prices being on the
Well,
windows.
actually, there is, isn't there?
Is there?
You know, big signs that say sale and all that kind of stuff that is plastered all over.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the one at McDonald's that says $2 for this kind of whatever it is, and things like that.
I mean, one of the things about that is, with the Supreme Court ruling on the Reed versus Gilbert, we can't draft any regulations that talk about the content of the sign. So you can't, due to the Supreme Court decision, you can't say you can't advertise sales or grand opening. You can't do any of that anymore at all. It's deemed unconstitutional at this point.
So the only way you can do it then is the way you're doing it, by restricting what you can put up there, as far as size.
Yeah, it's basically size and location. That's basically what you're
Yeah,
left
That's where the
with.
limit to 15% comes in?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to ask the question. So anything that we would want to do beyond that?
I did have one other question, and that was on the blue part that you put in where it says the total linear frontage of tenant. It goes 2, 4, 6, 8 square feet. I was wondering if it might make, that just seems confusing for you, Mike, to be able to administer that. I was wondering whether it would make more sense to just have 2 breakdowns, have it, if it's less than 100 feet, have it be 4 square feet, and if it's more than 100 square feet, then they could go up to 8 square feet.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's up to you. These are reasonably small signs, so that there's no magic to that break.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
You're not supposed to make Mike's job easier. Where did you get that idea? Come on, man. It's a good one.
What'd you have, Ed?
I mean, I don't have anything that,
The biggest thing this does is the issue that we've had before with that medical office building. I think that's where we're.
you're talking about the North Shore.
The North Shore.
Yeah, I wasn't here for that
Well,
specifically.
no, not that one, the other one where you started off with the, what are the pediatrics? and then something else, and they, going across the top.
Here,
and
we
then
can,
one
Is that the eye doctor?
Yeah,
It was an eye doctor and a pediatrician? Okay.
we can put it up on the screen. I've got,
Oh, where he came in and the landlord, I know what you're talking about now, the landlord wanted, to get, he had promised.
Yeah, promised.
The tenants X, and the tenants came in and said.
yeah.
And it was a misrepresentation. Now, that's where she's talking about being able to do a master plan for the building ahead of time,
But that's not,
but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the master plan for the building is not necessarily, if it's an individual building, is that is that a requirement? Or is that optional?
The way that we've worked it out, if it is a building with, I guess the easiest way to kind of summarize it, if it's a building that has individual entries to different tenants, then it's required to do the master plan. If it's kind of a shared entryway into one building, then it is just optional. But that would mean every time a sign was put up, they would have to come back to you to get approval for each and every
That's
sign.
it.
So the
That's it.
incentive
They did do
is.
that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
did do that, but now you had equal sharing.
I think the fight was all about these three numbers right here. Oh,
there.
there. That was what the argument was about, was the 917, the size of the 917.
Well, and if-
Right, but that whole building is 917, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, on individual, where there's individual tenants, would there be individual addresses for the tenants? Is that, is that part of what this says? I mean.
No.
It's, each one has their own sign for the address, or is there something, am I
In
reading?
terms of the address sign, I mean, there would kind of be two situations. You would do an address sign kind of for the building overall, because that is the address. The concern was that if you had a building that had an overall,
Yes.
let's just use the number 918, but each tenant had one, and it would be the suite, so it would be 918A, 918B, because it's the address that's used for basically the mailing.
Robert, you had a question.
Is the 917 too big or too small?
They said it was too small because the patients couldn't see it. They couldn't read it, and I don't think it met the code the way it was presented.
It didn't.
Right.
They wanted it bigger, like twice as big, and I think that the graphics then were
Yeah, I mean, we
shown.
tried to work a deal and, where it wasn't like going the full distance and then there wasn't enough support,
Yeah.
but.
But in this case, the 917 is probably too big, because it's bigger than 8 square feet.
Right.
But they could come in with a master plan, which would call for it to be larger, can't they?
Yes.
They could, yeah.
Yeah.
It would go through the exemption process, here and then the village board.
That's another issue that we've had, and I understand the need for advertising, but the medical office building that I was up against, the idea that older people are trying to find the doctor's office, well, they can't see a letter that's less than 2 feet tall, which I think, then they can't see street signs or anything else, they shouldn't be driving. Which I think are 6 inches tall.
True.
Anyway, I don't know if there's a way to say addresses cannot exceed X number of inches height, or, which goes back to my original question,
could.
where every building has got an address number that's a different size based on the size of the building. It's an address, not the name of the building, not the name of the tenant.
Correct.
It's just an address.
I mean, well, typically the thing, you'll typically see where they're all not one universal size, because what happens if, say, you get a smaller single-tenant development, you don't want them taking advantage of that full size. I mean, you're dealing with a very small amount of sign area here, 4 square feet, 8 square feet. So, I mean, we could make it universal, but it's usually slightly better to give a little bit more flexibility if the building's bigger, just to be able to see it on that facade.
I agree. That makes-
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah, the variability in the size of the numbers. I mean, obviously, if you get a really tiny building and then you get huge numbers on it, because that's what the code says, that's odd. So I think it makes sense to have that
Okay.
variability.
all right. Anybody have any other questions?
I like this. comparison that you came up with.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
It
just
really
the
helps a
analysis.
lot.
Yeah. So really, the biggest changes are to the wall and fascia signs is the biggest adjustments. that
And
we're
the window
talking about.
signs.
Yeah, and the window signs, yep. I don't have anything that I can see is
Neil?
gonna change the game.
I guess I'm not sure I understand the next step. You gave us this sheet that lists all the code under address signs. Is it that most of this would then be incorporated into that?
Well, all of that is what basically follows on page 2, straight to the end, that summarizes this is the actual ordinance language in this memo you received in advance from page 2 to the end. That memorandum just summarizes what's in here and compares to your current code. So this is the actual language that would be adopted.
Cliff notes,
Cliff notes, yeah.
cliff notes.
Cliff Notes, yes.
Julie?
I don't have anything else. I think the point about the height of the signs and making sure that that's clear above the grade, I think is a good one. And making sure that's not repeated anywhere else. I was glancing through the Cliff Notes and didn't see it anywhere else, but I think that's important. And if we did want to go ahead and approve this, we'd have to make sure that we put that in as one of the comments.
Right.
Well, we did add it to our sign ordinance as it stands now, didn't we?
Right, yes, I think it is in there, and I can certainly double
Yeah.
check and make sure
Yeah.
it's in there as this goes forward.
I just don't want it to go away and have to deal with that again.
Right.
And prepared kind of the next draft to take you forward. I'll make that correction on page 2, as I pointed out earlier. Did we want to switch the address sign of below 100 would be 4 square feet, 100 or more would be 8 square feet for the address signs? To make
That
Mike's
makes
life
sense to
easier?
me.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean everybody's going to use 8 Fair Street.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
Most of the signs that come in here are reasonably well done.
Yeah, I didn't note, even when I came out here the first time and drove around, I didn't really notice any. I've seen some bad stuff over the years, and it was more kind of just capturing what you have.
And we've learned from a few mistakes, like the big glaring white boxes out there that are gone now. Okay.
When I first read this on the blue part here, where it says total linear frontage of tenant, my first thought was, does it mean linear frontage of the lot or linear frontage of the building? And it
That
just-
is a good thing we should clarify, yes. It's of the building. It's meant to be proportional to the building, so it wouldn't be
If
of the lot. Okay.
If it just said less than 100 lineal feet of building frontage, that would
Okay.
clarify it.
No, that's a very good clarification. We'll make sure that that gets in here.
Do you want to ask for comments from the audience, Bob?
Yeah. Robert, do you have any other comments?
Could you use a microphone?
I just have to say, as I'm sitting here, I don't see a problem with the 917, but I'd be more concerned with, you can't read the business.
The angle of the photo may be a little bit
917 is
deceiving.
easy to read.
Could you use a microphone, though? Either up to the podium or this one?
I can't read it here, but when I drive by it.
When
I
you
can
drive by
read
it, it's very clear. Those letters are about this big.
That way everyone watching on TV can pick it up. Okay.
All right, well, so what's next, Michael?
To make, well, if we're ready to make a recommendation, we can make a recommendation that the village approve this. And then it'll go to Plan Commission for a public hearing, since it's part of the zoning ordinance, and then the village board for final approval.
Okay,
But we could just make a recommendation to approve it with our notes regarding
With our
the,
cha- with our
yeah,
notes,
with the
right.
changes on the address side, and to confirm the side area height issue.
okay.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the village approve these amendments with the suggested changes we came up with today.
Right.
I second.
Okay. Another roll call?
Okay, Member Waymire,
Aye.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
Member Deacon,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, the recommendation passes.
I'm going to ask you again, because I don't remember what the other issue was.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was going to go to the plan commission. I said, if they change anything, it's got to come back here before.
Oh, right, the site plan amendments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Has that gone anywhere yet?
No, it hasn't. I think this and that might try to,
Okay.
I'll have to double check with Glenn. But I
Okay.
think you might do them together.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
I do not.
You get something?
No, I don't.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Then I guess we're done. Meeting is adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?